G'day and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop.
We'd like to start.
We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their support in bringing you our weekly Q&A.
Today we are fortunate enough to be speaking with Ben Gould from Riverside Working Dogs, and Ben will be picking who he thinks has the best question to win our bag of dog food.
Good evening, Ben. How are you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Well, thank you. Tell us a bit about yourself, your family, where you're from, and what you do.
I'm Ben Gould from Riverside Working Dogs. Married with a very special wife, Tennille. She's put up a lot with me over the years. So
she's not sitting next to you, is she there, mate?
No, she's not here. She went away. She knew I was pretty nervous, so she's away completely. So she's been a strong wife for me, propping me up over the years through a lot of things. I've got two kids, Charlie and Cooper. I'm sixth generation on the farm I'm at now. It's a family farm that's I'm very proud to still be at, and to keep the tradition going of our family, with my parents sadly passing over the last few years. So yeah, I'm very proud to still be here.
No, sorry to hear that, mate, and I'm sure they're proud of you guys for still being there. What stock do you have there, mate?
Mainly run heifers. We run about 350 heifers. I sort of buy them around 300 kilos and join them to a bull and sort of try and sell them about 6 months later as red and blue taggers. And then, we run at 120 breeders on top of that. So we've got our own country, plus I gist a lot of country as well.
Cool. And people that aren't familiar with red and blue taggers, mate, do you want to elaborate for us a little bit there, please?
Red taggers, I think it's they're 4 or 5 months further gone in calf, and then the blue tags are under that sort of thing. So the red tags are heavy in calf, and closer to calving, and the blues are pregnant, but just under that 4 or 5 months. Yeah.
Very cool, mate. So you mentioned sixth generation farmer. So obviously your passion for working dogs and livestock's bred into you.
Yeah, especially the farming part. The dogs sort of came a little bit later, but they're sort of always there in the background, sort of thing. Yeah.
Did you ever have an option?
No, definitely not now.
So how do you use your dogs in your day-to-day life?
Generally, I try and carry a dog with me all the time, whether I need them or not. It's a good way of building a bond between a dog, I feel. And 9 times out of 10, if you don't take a dog somewhere and you don't need it, when you get there, generally you do need it, sort of thing. So yeah, I cart them around with me all the time. I couldn't do what I do without them at all, with adjustment paddocks, and I do a bit of contract mastering for a local agent here as well. So no chance of doing it without the dogs.
What would that look like without dogs? Like you said, no chance, but why is that? The terrain or the amount of stock work?
Oh, the amount of stock work and the amount of toing and from back and forth. Like even being on the dairy with quiet cattle, not having a dog is an absolute pain in the ass, because when you're walking the cows to the dairy, because they're so quiet, they're just happy to stop. So it's not about pulling them up; it's about getting them going. And the amount of extra Ks you do on a motorbike back and forth, 50 meters back and forth, because a cow stopped to eat a bit of clover or something like that. Whereas just having one soft dog that's sort of just back and forth, and just keeping them sort of poking along at a nice steady pace.
Yeah. So what have you got in your current team at the moment?
So my main working dogs at the moment is Kojak, Patch, Sky, and Scarlet are my main go-to dogs that sort of can handle the pressure and stuff, and they're all by Woodford Jack. And I've got a couple younger dogs coming through that are by Zane, American dog. I brought Seaman here, and they're coming along nicely. And then a couple of litters on the ground at the moment, sort of thing. So I don't generally keep too many dogs. I am a little bit time poor, so I feel I just keep enough that I know I can keep on top of. Sometimes I wish I did have a few more adult dogs, sort of thing, for the bigger weeks, to try and give the other ones a bit of a rest. But it's a process to build up numbers.
And you mentioned your team there is probably a bit, or is heavily invested with Woodford Jack blood. Why is that?
I rate him highly as a dog, purely because he seems to improve dogs. Like his pups are generally better than him as well. He's just a good, calm dog with good strength, and just breeding on well. There's not too many dogs that you can probably call a true sire dog around at the moment. Like if you're looking at a lot of old pedigrees with the Turbos, the Branson Dons, and those sort of things that pop up everywhere. There's not too many dogs at the moment that are doing that, and I feel he'd be 10 or maybe 11 or 12 now, and I think people are starting to realise that and using him quite a bit, and it's going to start popping up more and more because they're actually making it into the workforce.
So we've spoken there about your pack a bit. Why collies, mate?
I've had Kelpies and I didn't mind them. I feel, and this is just my opinion, the collies have probably got a bit of a cooler mind. Say on the weeks when you don't have a ton of work, I feel like the collies are happy, like they're not up and down the pen, and if they are on a chain, big rings around your kennels. But yeah, I just found the collies to be a cooler mind and just easier for what I was wanting.
Bark on cattle or no bark on cattle, mate? What's your preference?
I prefer no bark.
Yep.
But sometimes it's handy if you're in the bush somewhere to hear a bit of a yap just every now and then, just so you do know where they are. But sometimes that's a hassle too, because then the cattle know where they are too. So generally no bark.
Yeah, right. I've seen a few people lately using Hunaways on cattle. Well, have any opinion on that, mate?
I think it'd be tough for cows and calves, Hunaways, because they draw a lot of attention and cows would be coming straight out at them. On dry stock, it may be okay. It may fire the younger cattle up to run a bit faster if they're barking in behind, maybe. But everything serves a purpose, and if you use them for the right jobs, they'll definitely do a job.
It's pretty cool to see people trying different things out there at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, what are you looking for in your own line?
Main thing I'm looking for, there's a couple of things, is want. I want a dog to just want to please you, to want to work for you, to have all the want to do everything for you, to when the shit hits the fan, they want to get you out of it. When I work my dogs, I can be a bit loud, and some dogs just don't handle that. So I need a dog that they want to kick another gear when it's hitting the fan, sort of thing. The other thing is type. I'm big on type. I've got some that I'm really happy with, but I'm still building on that. I want good, strong, well-boned dogs, sleek skin. That's what I'm sort of chasing. It doesn't always work like that, but it's a direction I'm trying to aim for.
I was going somewhere with the question then, and I got sidetracked with thinking about more that you're saying. But anyways, has the type changed too much from where you were originally? Like the dogs you already had in your pack?
As in type wise?
Yeah.
No, not really. My original dog was an old dog, Digger. He was a big sort of a dog. He was a Kelpie cross. And then Jake, he was a big dog. And then a few of my bitches have been medium-sized sort of bitches, but a few dogs I've got, two males I've got now, especially, are quite big and well-boned dogs. So it's heading in the right direction where I'm trying to aim for.
Yeah, right. And sorry, I just remember where I was going there before. You're talking about want. So you prefer your pups to have a lot of go about them rather than try to build desire in them early on?
Yeah, you can slow a dog down, I feel, but you can't bring a dog up. So if they've got that want and that desire to really work for you, really please for you, they're the dogs you can rely on those tough hot days, or when you're really struggling. That desire to want to please you and not give up on you.
Cool.
So how do you pick a pup for yourself when they're 8 weeks old?
Oh, I've tried every different way. The runt, the big one, the ugly one. It's as far as I can figure out, it's the luck of the draw, sort of thing. So, but I do try and pick that bigger pup. I do try and keep an eye on which is the first one to crawl out of the box. whether it's right or not, I don't know, but that's things I try and look for is a good size pup, because they're the ones generally the strong ones wanting to try and even being a little bit dominant, I suppose. Yeah, that's sort of the only thing I can really pick for, and it doesn't always work either.
Have you had any experiences, or what experiences have changed your mind, or what about the way you pick a pup? Like, how far would you normally hold on? You pick something, then you go, oh, you hold on to it, and you go, no, or would you give it more time because it's something you liked? Or
I've learned now, especially the last few years, if I'm not getting on with a pup, if I don't feel that we're clicking early, I'll try and move the pup on, because they've generally got enough talent. It's just that I'm not clicking with them, and rather than me, because I'm not the most patient person, fighting back and forth and not getting on with the pup, I feel I'm better off giving someone else the opportunity early. And I've had a lot of experiences with people taking on dogs that I just didn't get on with, that are absolutely wrapped with them. So I find that's a big thing I've learned is not to hang on too long with something that's not clicking with me, and giving them the best opportunity for themselves.
have you ever had something that like you thought wasn't going to suit you, and it might have picked up an injury or something? You thought, oh, you have to hold on to it a bit longer, and then found that it's worked, it's changed?
I found that with a bitch having a litter of pups sometimes, that can settle a bitch down. I haven't had the experience with something getting injured, but I've definitely had it with a litter of pups maturing a bitch, and changing things that I've had issues with. But yeah, that's probably the main experience I've had there.
What advice would you give to someone trying to pick a pup?
I don't know. I think make sure you got the time to start off with. I feel if you haven't got the time, if you find something you really want, if you feel headspace is a big thing for me, that if you're not in the right headspace to be starting a dog or training a dog, it's not worth doing, because you can get too short with a dog, I feel, if you're not in the right headspace. So yeah, that's probably the main advice I'd have is make sure you're ready to take that on.
I can actually relate to that, mate, because I don't know how many pups I've quit too early because I haven't been in the right headspace, and I find myself a bit too hard on those pups. Yeah. And I look back and I see, no regrets, because I've moved them on for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I see someone else doing well with that pup, and I'm just like, I feel good that they're doing well with it. And I think, but why? And I try to actually psychoanalyze myself a bit more to go, why wasn't my headspace right, and could I have done something different? Not for the pup, but myself as well.
Yeah, I find a lot of people put too much pressure on a young dog and not really look at what they're doing themselves. I've done it in the past myself, and that's why I try and really look at where I'm at the time, and then and also if I'm not clicking with the dog, it's something you can't force to happen. And I feel you're better off giving that pup every opportunity and letting someone else have a go.
Have you ever found a pup to you but you don't take to it?
Yeah, and I've found it both ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
A good example was I had a nice little bitch called Patch, and I did really like her, and she didn't like me at all. Like it's so hard because she had a heap of potential. She was a good type. And I was talking to a person. They said, "Oh, what's this dog?" And I said, "Oh, it's Patch." And I said, "It won't come to me. It's ignorant, but it's got so much potential." And this friend of mine called out her name, and it was actually my father-in-law, and he called out her name, and she ran straight over to him. So it was just a thing that wasn't clicking between her and I, and it wasn't due to me neglecting her or anything. It's just that it was she didn't like something about me.
So he inherited a new dog?
No, Joe Leven ended up getting her, and that's how I came about getting Patch and Sky. So when Joe bred the original Patch to Woodford Jack, that's how I got my Patch and Sky that I've got now.
Cool. And you've spoken a bit about breeding there, mate. Who do you think are the most influential, not just size, but dams in what you've done? I was going to say your era, but just in general for what you do.
I suppose originally there was a bitch, Highlight Candy was a bitch I really liked, and and I bought a pup out of her from Trevor Tessman, which is Highlight Cow Dogs, and she was a really nice bitch, and she was probably one of the bitches that were. So this would be, might be 7-8 years ago, I guess, or maybe a bit longer. They were $1,000 pups back then, sort of thing. So she had a bit of a name for herself then. So that was my experience on something that I've tried. But I suppose one that popped up in pedigrees everywhere is Clover, Crowsnest Clover. Yeah, so there's sort of two that come to mind at the moment. Yeah. A bitch that I actually do have found, and she's one of mine, is Dot, Highlight Dot. She's bred on pretty well with everything. She's sort of gone to. So yeah, she's been a bitch that I find is a very good dam.
I've actually seen her. They mentioned a few pedigrees, and you touched on a price of pups back then, and you said back then. Now, where do you think the value of pups and a good working dog? How do you see the direction of that heading?
Well, I feel dogs are finally starting to get their worth. You know, the days of a $50 pup from the neighbour or a carton of beer or something, like there is a worth to a pup, because breeders put a lot of work, time, effort into dogs, and raising them costs money. You know, so I feel that the value should be there. One of my main points is you see how much people pay for a horse. Well, my point is you can get cattle in with a shit horse, you know, but if you get a dog that won't work or is no good, you know, but the horse is worth a lot more money. So
I've never once thought of it like that, but that's, it's very true.
Yeah, well, the dogs are worth men, really. So that's where I feel that the value should be there.
And with the increase of value in a working dog, the one thing that I'm a bit worried about, concerned about, I suppose, is where that's going to leave the breeds of working dogs, whether it be Kelpies, Collies, whatever it may be, but people just jumping on the bandwagon. Have you thought any deeper into that?
How do you mean?
Like, with the value of dogs coming up, do you think they'll just, you know, let's call them backyard breeders? Just
I was going to say, I think you more pets and stuff.
Yeah, or just in general, like people just breeding for the dollar rather than for quantity rather than quality.
Yeah, and those sort of people will give the dog game a bad name. Generally, they get found out pretty quick, I feel, because word of mouth is pretty strong in the dog world. So you know, it can last for a period of time, but you know, it's nothing worse than someone receiving a bad pup from you or a bad review, because it spreads really quickly. And so I feel that a lot of that sort of stuff in that world will pull up, or people will realise it if they are trying to rule the system.
I hope so, mate, because I'd hate to see the pounds full.
Yeah.
How do you go about starting a pup?
Starting a pup, and this goes back to state of my mind. I don't really set a time when to start a dog, age or anything. It depends on so many factors: myself, time, headspace, the pup's mental, whether it's ready to go. So it's generally a combination of everything, and that's when I'll start a pup. So the best thing for pups also is kids. I think there's no better way to start handling a pup is kids, you know, in and out the kennel, playing with them, carrying them around everywhere, and you know, and you know, the kids can get a bit rough with dogs sometimes, but that's, you know, the pup that's still following the kids around at the end of the day and absolutely loving life. That's a good way of picking a pup also. But yeah, I feel you just got to be ready yourself, and everything else has got to line up with it. The pup's got to be ready, and all that as well.
Has that changed?
Yeah, it has with me, and a lot of that's changed due to having kids. I don't have that spare time like I used to play around with the pups myself. So there's been a bit of a gap in a few years where I've lost a bit of that time with work commitments and young family sort of thing, because you used to be able to finish work and you go muck around with dogs for a while and you come in and have dinner sort of thing. But now you knock off work and then you go to play with the dogs, and then you can hear the kids fighting, and then, you know, the wife having a bit of trouble with them, and so it is a bit of a juggling act, and that's why I've sort of cut back a little bit at the moment on trying to keep young dogs. But the kids now at the age they're sort of starting to do the shorter things, the smaller things for me, which a lot of times it's that 12 weeks to 6 months is I feel is a lot of time just to try and mate up with the dog or just get them to be human friendly sort of thing.
It's good to hear someone else has the same problems I do. I was actually put up a comment on Dog Talk. It would have been maybe 5-6 weeks ago about dogs and kids. Once you start training a dog, how much interaction do you let your kids have with them? Does that change at all?
Not at all. I feel if you take that away, that dog does become a one-man dog. It's not a proven thing with me, but that's just my opinion or from what I've sort of seen a little bit, I suppose. I think it's good to have interaction with other people. And, there might be a chance that dog gets to 2-year-old and it doesn't work out for me, but it's still, it helps that dog to go to someone else, I feel, because it hasn't been just stuck with me for that period of time.
So how much time do you put into training?
At the moment, a lot of it's on the job,
Yep.
sort of thing. I've sort of slackened off over the years. Going back when I first I only used to have 1 or 2 dogs. And then, so by the time one of them were old and you're ready for a young one, well, you had all the time, but then once you start getting a few other dogs and it becomes a time factor. So especially the last 12 months, a lot of my training has been on the job sort of thing. So
You feel your dogs are better for that?
I do, actually. I feel you can take the work out of a dog. One of the things I really don't like about when working dogs is that dog's constantly looking back at you, looking for directions. And sometimes and I've done this, and sometimes by putting too much work in early, you can take the work out of the dog a little bit and they're looking for too much from you. So that's where I feel, maybe just leave them alone a little bit longer and just let them figure things out for themselves. You really know what sort of dog you got at the end of the day.
If you find yourself in that situation where the dog is looking back for you, what are some tips that you could give our listeners out there today? How would you approach that?
I think if it is looking back at you, try and leave it alone. Just leave the dog alone, let it keep going and let it start getting its own direction, get a feel for the cattle itself. And some dogs it's just in them sort of thing. But I feel if you can just leave them alone a little bit, and I can be a bit bad for trying to control too much. I feel if you can just leave them alone and let them try and figure things out for themselves, that can sort of help that dog work through that.
And you mentioned starting on like cattle there. So do you start your dogs on cattle or do you progress from other livestock?
I try and start them on sheep, purely because if they've got a little bit of strength or they've got a little bit of want and the tense sort of thing, they're generally going to get hurt on cattle because they put themselves in a silly situation. So if I can start them on sheep, that's generally the way I will try and start them and just try and get a little bit of distance, a little bit of control and just go from there and then sort of bring them up to stock and try and start them on sort of either weaners or dry cattle, definitely not cows and calves, just let them get their mind a little bit first.
So what sort of do you have on them before you transition onto cattle? Is there any commands in particular or
well,
just that one?
No, the one, I definitely stop and I come behind. There's 9 times out of 10, if you can stop your dog, the cattle will fix their position a little bit, and then you can correct the dog out and around and get things sorted out again. Whereas if you don't have that stop, when it does go to shit, it just keeps going and getting worse and worse, and then your blood's boiling. Whereas if you could just stop the dog and call it in behind and let things settle, you can 9 times out of 10 get yourself out of a bit of strife.
So when starting out mucking around with dogs, mate, who inspired you?
Well, I suppose the first fellow I used to muck around with a lot once I started trialing was Shane Randall. He's a friend of mine that sort of lived about half an hour, 40 minutes from here, and he's got a good line of dogs, and he was nice enough to sort of invite me around, and he had a bit of a setup in his backyard with some sheep, and for a fair period of time I was around there once or twice a week. And him and his family were nice enough to take me and Sunil in and sort of look after us and sort of and he was always no problem with telling me what I was doing wrong, and we had that understanding that I need to learn, and he was very good with me like that.
That casino area seems to be pretty strong with cattle trialers. How much interaction do you have away from trialing?
Oh, not a lot. From my point of view, I don't have a lot of the time, but with Robert Johnson up the road, I know he has training days and he invites a lot of people in, sort of thing. So, but it's probably one of the best places to cattle dog trial on the North Coast here, because at casino, I think within 2 hours we've probably got 10 to 15 trials within 2 hours drive.
Yeah, that's not too bad, is it? And I envisage it's a lot like yard trialing, where you can come, run half a dozen dogs, and head home all on the same day.
Yeah, some of the trials, a lot of show trials are single day trials, but most of the main trials are generally 2-day trials, and they're starting to get a bit more numbers. And there's been the odd one that's had to start on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, so it's we're definitely blessed to be where we are, fuel wise, anyway.
Cool.
So, how long have you been trialing for?
I started trialing in 2012. I lived just up the road from Robert Johnson, and I seen there was just happened to be a sign up one day of cattle dog trial, and I just followed it in and got into his place, and happened to know a few people there, and they said there's a bush dog trial the next day if you had a dog, come and give it a run. So I come home and I set a couple of panels up in the paddock, and I still remember my old man standing there and saying, "You'll never do any good out of this. You're better off going to work." And anyway, I did the course that I made up at home, and we went in the next day, and my dog Jake won the bush dog trial. Hooked ever since.
That's the way to do it.
Now you got me, mate. What's a bush dog trial?
Bush dog trial in our area is someone who hasn't trialed before, or sometimes they make the rule that someone who hasn't placed at a trial before. And the whole idea of it is to get people in that probably aren't confident enough to have a go in the maiden, novice, or open events. And generally the rules are relaxed a little bit. Instead of having 3 head, they'll have 5. They will relax to the rules that you're allowed to walk off your peg and assist your dog. And it's just all about confidence building and to get people to go, well, that wasn't so bad.
Sorry, my phone's just gone off its head here.
It's not a question.
That actually comes up, mate. I know in yard trialing 3 sheep, a lot of people moving towards whistles over commands. What's your preference?
I whistle, generally because the dogs are a fair distance away with a lot of the jobs I do. A lot of my home jobs here are all close, but generally if I'm doing a contract job or some of my bush paddocks that I got, the dogs are just generally way too far away to even hear what I'm saying. So I'm lucky enough I can whistle just with my mouth. I don't need an actual whistle or anything. So
that's a shame.
Yeah. I remember when I was learning to whistle, I was doing it with my fingers, and Dad said, "Don't ever learn to whistle with your fingers." And I was like, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, if your hands are covered in shit one day, how are you going to pull your dog?"
Yeah, I was doing a bit of drafting with a mate, and I seen him put his fingers in his mouth. Went, "How'd that go down?" And he goes, "Yeah, not that great. I won't do that again."
In cattle trialing, what is the one main thing that you see a lot of handlers struggle with?
I think off balance. I think getting their dog off balance is a big struggle, and it can be a struggle with myself as well, because that does take a fair bit of practice. Because naturally, your dog wants to balance, and so the easy part is from the dog's point of view is bringing them the stock to you. But a lot of times, you need the dog to be off balance in a spot where the weight is getting pulled. Like the cattle are sort of wanting to go a different direction to you, and if your dog's in behind and balance and bringing them to you, you're just bringing them faster. And my old dog Jake, he was very good at working off balance. A lot of times he wouldn't actually be behind the stock, he'd be beside him and just ready for that weight for where they were wanting to pull towards. And by having that dog already in the right position and away from the stock a little bit, can slow them up and just steady them down and can make the rest of the run a bit easier.
Yeah, right. So, do you guys in cattle trialing still have a dog that heads, or is it not as important?
It's not as important. A lot of people don't like the idea of a heel dog at all, but for trialing, it is a plus to have it, because if the cattle are rerun a lot over the weekend, especially Brahman cattle, they can settle right down to a point where they just won't walk. And those true heading dogs, all they can do is get back up to the head, hit them on the head, turn the stock back around where they've come from, and you're sort of losing points because the cattle are going round and round instead of in a straight line. So
Yep.
I do feel that the heel is a weakness if it's not used right, because the dog can fall back on it. But used correctly, you've got the ultimate dog. If you've got a dog that can head and pick up a heel on command, that's the dog. Especially if you've got dirty country as well, not just for trialing. Since my old dog Jake is not in the team anymore, I don't have any dogs that will pick a heel up. And the amount of times I've been stuck at a creek or stuck in some lantana or something like that, and just a nip on the heel to drive something out would have been perfect.
Yeah, we're actually going to apologise to our viewers out there. We just got, that's why my phone was going nuts. The question bar wasn't underneath, so with
last week's Q&A not being live, I had to change the settings and they hadn't been changed back.
So that's why we hadn't had any questions come through just yet, but I think we've fixed that now.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yep. So while we're waiting for the questions to come back now, I hope I haven't asked a lot of those questions, because we could have stole some dog bag, some food off some people there. When you are trialing and like you said there, the cattle get a bit heavy, and you don't want those dogs that's heading, how are you pushing your cattle through the course when they're getting heavy?
It's about positioning and just really not taking their head away. Like if they are getting heavy and slow, you really just don't want the dog anywhere up past the hip, sort of thing, because as soon as you take a little bit of momentum away, they can just stop completely if they're really quiet and had enough runs. So it's just about positioning the dog in the right way and anticipating what the cattle are wanting to do. And it changes for every beast.
So has trialing changed much over the years from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think especially from when I first started, it wasn't as competitive. It was more a bit of a good catch-up. There was definitely the competition part there, but I think a lot more people are taking it more serious, which I think is a good thing. But I still hope the fun part stays. It can happen, but hopefully it doesn't get to the point where it's too professional and the fun part goes out of it. But that's the main thing I feel has probably changed.
Do you think there's a way to keep that fun in there from what you've seen?
Well, I feel it's probably easy if people take a bit of a chill pill, sort of thing, and we're not playing for sheep stations, but it is a competition, and you do have to be serious. I get that, but I feel that you can get a little bit too full on sometimes, and I've done it myself. You just got to realise that it is a fun sport to be in, and we're very lucky to do it. So that's what I feel can make it better.
And have you noticed any change in handlers' ability or the way handlers approach a cattle trial?
They've probably improved a bit. I think there's probably more schools out there now than what there was when I started, or I'm more aware of schools. So people are very keen to get to them. So I think that's a big plus for the dog world.
I was going to ask something else then. I forgot. My head's all over the shop tonight.
Do you have a favourite trial you like to participate in?
Yeah, Benalbo by far is my favourite trial. It's a little town not far from Casino. It's a great trial to start young dogs. It's a tight little course, a tight little arena, and the cattle are always spot on, absolutely spot on. So it makes a great open trial, makes it very tough because the scores are generally very high. But they are still the cattle that if you don't get it 100% right, they will peel a few points off you. So it's not one of those easy trials where the cattle just do everything absolutely right for you, they still will test you. So yeah, Bonalbo is definitely my favourite.
Tell us a little bit about the different courses in cattle trialing.
The two main ones I've done is a mirror course. So the entry is generally up one end of the course, and then the exits at the complete opposite. And the two obstacles that are in the middle are exactly the same. So you just got to do figure eights through both those obstacles. And I don't mind that way of doing things. They generally try and use it for cattle flow. It makes things a lot quicker because they'll send the cattle, they'll work them from one end to the other. And once the whole lot go across, then they'll work them back. So from a time point of view, it's a good way of doing things. And then your normal one where there's a bit of a hole generally at the back fence somewhere, and then you go to a bit of a race, and then go through a gap, and then go on your way home, sort of thing. But they're both. I enjoy doing both of them.
How much time are you guys normally given for your course?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, and that's basic across the board, regardless of the course, or
yeah. 5 minutes. I think in Queensland it might even be 6 minutes. They'll ring a bell at 5 minutes. So you know sort of where you're at. You've got a minute to go, and you can actually choose to keep trying to finish where you are, or you can actually quit your position and take the cattle home and try and get the points at the gate at home.
Okay, so you just forfeit the points that you already.
Oh, you forfeit what you could have got. Like, say if there's another obstacle, you can say, I'm not going to do that last obstacle, and I'm just going to go for the home gate. And so you forget about one obstacle, you lose, you don't get the chance to get points for that, and then you can take it home.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned a couple of different courses there. For anyone looking at getting into cattle trialing, should they be looking for a particular kind of trial or course, or should they just have a crack at anything they can get to?
I think a lot of the time it depends on what facility you've got. Will determine whether you can run a mirror course. But you do need panels and yards at the end to hold the stock to be able to rerun them back, and you know some facilities just don't have that. So it'll just depend on what sort of is available.
So, question here from Natalie Grimmer: how do you prepare your dogs before a trial, and could you potentially give us a few exercises you would go through with different types of dogs, and would you use sheep or cattle for the fine tuning?
Okay, so sheep are good for fine tuning unless you got really quiet weaners or something like that, because the fine tuning part, you don't need the cattle running around everywhere. And one of my training runs that I do before a trial a lot of the time would be to have a mob of cattle or sheep sort of thing about maybe 20, 30 meters away from me, and I'd send the dog round and try and keep distance. But before the dog even gets to the back, I'd sit the dog before they could get to the balance of the cattle, and then I'd sit the dog off him and then call the dog back off and come in behind me, right back around and back to the other side of the stock, and still not let him get in behind the stock again. And what that does is start creating that off balance call, because I don't really have a good left and right call on my dogs. I don't practice enough. So it's a good way of me cheating. It's a cheat way sort of thing. So, and that can be just a 5-10 minute run of, just not letting the dog get in behind the cattle, because that's where they want to be. So the hardest part is getting them away from where they want to be. And I feel that's a trick that's worked for me a lot.
And how much would you work them down before a trial?
Sometimes I don't.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't at all. And it does show sometimes, and then other times it doesn't make much difference. But if you're sort of doing a bit of that with my work, I try and put a bit of that sort of extra polish in when I'm doing the work. Just call them off, doing certain things where they don't actually have to really do it, but just a couple of times a week doing that sort of keeps them sharp.
And a cattle work down before every trial?
No. One trial I've been to, they backed the truck into the arena and had a loading ramp off it, and they'd opened the gate and let 3 head out. So that was there was no work down there.
That sort of few dogs out.
So, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, they try and get the the committees that are running trials to have someone go out, a fortnight, 3 weeks beforehand and just start handling stock. A lot of time the stock are fine until you get off your horse or till you get off the motorbike. And they're like, oh, this is weird. And that's can be an issue when you get to a trial. So a lot of times it's just about, walking through stock and just having the dog stay off the stock and you just walk around and through them just so they start getting used to people on foot.
So, question here from Chris Egan. Do you think the collie lines from different countries, Australia, UK, New Zealand, and USA, suit a particular breed of cattle here in Australia better than others?
The reason I think there's good dogs in every country. It's just that there's some people favour different things. The reason I went to Zane in America was there's not too many dogs that I could see do what he does in the way he could sit under stock calmly. Like there's videos of him with a cow just sort of pretty well jumping all over him, and he's just sitting there calmly, sort of thing. Or as soon as they make the command to bite or hit, he can do that, and then still be calm to be able to stay under cattle like that. So that's the reason why I went that way, and I'm sure there would be dogs like that in the UK and all other places. I just picked this dog because I liked him personally.
What do you feel is your best achievement so far?
Probably winning the 2014 Australian Open Dog of the Year with Jake. That was a big thing. I wasn't even really chasing points. I didn't really know what points were back then. I'd only been trialing for 2 years, sort of thing, and I found out that I was sort of going well in the New South Wales points, and started going to a couple more because I thought, I might have a go at this, and then realised that I was going well in the Australian points, and then really started driving for the last 3 months, trying to go to trials everywhere. I ended up doing 22 trials for the year, and I worked out it was about 10,500 kilometres, sort of thing. So it was a lot of driving, and I was very, very happy, and I think that was the point where my father finally realised that it was a good thing what I was doing, because he always work. And I remember on the second last trial, I think we were leading only by a couple of points, and I was driving home from Rockhampton, and he said to me, why don't you stay in Rocky for the week, because there was another trial up there, and because it's an opportunity you don't want to miss out on. You don't want to regret sort of missing out on a trial and someone passing you. So that was the first time I felt it was probably acceptance from him that it was a good thing what I was doing. So yeah, that was probably definitely my best achievement, was the 2014 Dog of the Year.
How are points taken
Are they
in a
off
cattle trial?
like placings or?
Yeah, so first place is 6 points,
Yep.
and it works its way down to 1 for sixth. And then there's a bonus point for every dog over 30. So if there's 10 dogs over 30, which is 40 dogs, there's a bonus point. So
So 6 becomes 7 and 4 becomes 5, sort of thing.
yeah. So
Like your maths is on it today.
I know.
Oh,
It's a first.
yeah, so it was brought in that rule a few years ago because you could go to a dog trial at a small show, and there might be 20 dogs or 30 dogs in it, and you get the same amount of points as if you win one of the big ones when there's 200 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sort of rewarding the dogs for winning the bigger events.
Yep.
Which sort of made it a bit more of a level playing field.
I think I like that idea. Growing up in the horses, with our local point scores, it wasn't like that. So I like that idea of it.
And what about during a trial? Do you do much judging at all?
I've done a little bit. I'm probably not the best judge. I get distracted, I guess. But yeah, I've done a little bit of judging, and it's not an easy job, but it's the people that do it. It's credit to them. Yeah.
And what are you looking for? Like, how are you taking points off when you're judging?
I'm just looking for a dog that does what he needs to do. Like there's some dogs that create issues. There's some dogs that don't do enough. That the cattle can walk off course, sort of thing, just purely because the dog's just sort of happy to sort of sit along behind him, and he's not doing anything wrong really, but he's not doing anything correct either. So it's just doing enough. and not doing too much or not doing enough.
Question here from Dave Motley. Do you have a different approach to the heavier European type cattle versus the freer moving Boss Indigo style? How big of a part does stock handling play in your cattle trialing?
Plays a lot, and that comes back to the anticipation on what the cattle are wanting to do. And especially some of those Angus cattle, especially the bigger ones as well, they really want to pick a fight with the dog a lot of the time. And if you can have a dog that can just stand and hold his ground and not put that bite on, a lot of times that's a lot better than biting, sort of thing. And then your yak cattle, they can handle a bit more of a bite sometimes, but you can go in with all the plans in the world, and until you get out there, it changes straight away.
And do you go out there with some kind of different approach before you get out there with different types of cattle?
I used to try and plan and have what I'm going to do, and then I even sometimes given someone advice before they went out there, and you go out there and you think, oh, that was wrong, So I think you just got to take it as it comes out the gate, and it is a quick decision, and it's right or wrong within 1 second, sort of thing. So it's thinking on the run and changing plan, not sticking to plans, because it can go pear-shaped real quick.
And we've touched a lot on stock handling tonight. And do you think that's a massive part of where the more experienced stock handlers, less experienced stock handlers come undone over the people that do more of it?
It can be. It can be, because they're not anticipating, reading stock on what position, where they're wanting to go, and that's where the weight comes into it as well. So it's big on anticipating stock, and you don't have to be a cow person to know all that. It's just thinking ahead, thinking on the run.
And talking about anticipation there, I can't imagine you can see your dog a lot of the time behind cattle, where I suppose when we're working sheep, we've got the advantage of being able to see it over the top. So are you guys barking orders at your dog or trying to anticipate for your dog, or are you just letting him have his head while trialing as well?
A bit of both. It depends at the time on what you need. I can be an over talker, especially with Jake. I used to talk way too much with him, and I don't know why I did, because he never used to listen anyway. As good as he was, I just needed to shut my mouth with him, sort of thing. And he was just the sort of dog I needed to leave alone, but I couldn't. It was just a stress thing with me, I think, with him. But yeah, a lot of times it's just at the time you got to make the decision, and if they're in behind and the cattle are coming the right direction, there's no need to say anything. But then you got to start thinking, okay, a lot of times cattle will walk quite slowly to an obstacle, and for some reason, once they do go through it, they want to trot. So you got to start thinking, okay, I've got to start getting ready, make sure the dog's ready, and try and anticipate what the next move's going to be.
Do you find when you anticipate you're revving up a bit?
Yeah.
And how's your dog? The majority of your dogs, are they ramping up when you're ramping up?
Jake did, and that's, I think we both fed each other, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But whereas the other dogs, I'm nowhere near as tense with them, sort of thing. Yeah, he just wanted to really go as quickly, and he knew the course, so he used to anticipate to the point where sometimes he could have been a step too far, and I knew he was going to do that sort of thing. But the other ones I'm nowhere near as bad.
Nothing like having that blood boiling, isn't it?
Oh, they know you're at a trial too. They know.
Is there a message you'd like to get out into the dog community?
I think one main message is a lot of people talk about wanting to trial. They just don't think they're good enough. My main thing is, I'm far from a good trainer, and I've done well. So you don't have to put that pressure on yourself. Just get out there and have a go. And one of the mistakes I used to make when I first started with Jake, I'd go and I didn't back myself or back him. And I used to only enter in the maiden. So I'd go for a drive, I'd have one run, maybe miss out on a final by 1 point, but I had to sit there all day. So that's my main bit of advice is, back yourself. You're going to make mistakes. The best fellas make mistakes. So get out there, have a go, enter in everything, because it's a long way to drive and time, and you're only going to get better by the more runs you get under your belt.
There's a question here from Carl Schubert. Is there any dog on the scene at the moment that is grabbing your attention and you think a couple of the best dogs around?
It's a bit of a tough one because we just haven't trialled for so long. Sort of thing, like I haven't been to a trial now for it's over 12 months, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, on the spot, I can't really think of anything. There is a dog of Andrew Jensen's called Buck. He's a good dog. I've seen him run a few times, and I've seen a lot of videos of him. He's a nice dog. But yeah, there's good dogs everywhere.
And like you said before, you're looking for those nice stylish dogs, but nice type of dog. But also, you mentioned Zane, those dogs that lay underneath. Do you want to explain a bit about that laying underneath?
Well, there's not a lot of dogs in Australia as well, and I don't necessarily have one either, that can just stand nose to nose with the beast, and give that beast an opportunity to move. A lot of people think a tough dog is that swipe by bite, and I've got dogs that do the exact same thing. To me, that's not a lot of strength. It does move cattle, it does do a job, and they do have to be tough to do it. But there's not a lot of dogs that can actually just walk straight up to a 400 kilo, 500 kilo cow and just stand there and go, well, I'm not moving, sort of thing, and give them that opportunity to move. And if they don't, well, they've got that good solid bite, and then move on.
Oh, that's cool, mate. And just to go back to what you were saying before about having a go, I suppose as Aussies, we're all pretty quick on putting shit on other people and having a dig. So don't be scared. People out there that are thinking about having a go, what's the worst that can happen, right?
And trust me, it is a lot easier than you think. It's a couple dogs I've ran, I had no sides on them. Like all I had was a stop and come behind. And, I done the course, because as they pop out one side, I could sit them and then call them in behind. And then if I wanted to go the other way, I'd send them around, sit them, and then come behind. So I had no real calls. And you can get by doing that and have a bit of fun until you can sort of build your confidence up and do what works for you.
And how inviting is the cattle scene for beginners?
It is good. It is great. Like when I first started, it was great, and I think they're really wanting to invite more people in, because the bigger the sport is, it's only better for the sport, sort of thing. So I think it's a great sport to be in, and I can see, talking from New South Wales working dog, that they're really wanting to definitely get newcomers to come and have a run.
Well, there you go, mate. I'm not afraid to look like a dickhead and to have a crack at anything. So I think you've talked me into having a crack at a cattle trial.
Yeah, that's it.
Lucky you're already entered for one.
Yeah, I know, but it could have changed my mind pretty quickly. I got hunted. I've only ever tried one once for a novelty, and I got hunted pretty quickly. So, Mitchum, if you're listening out there, thanks, mate. We've had a laugh about that a few weeks ago.
Away from dogs, do you have a talent or hobby that people probably wouldn't know about?
I play the violin. No, I don't. Play. No, I don't have many talents. I used to play a bit of rugby, never was much good at it, but just enjoyed, having fun, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, it's about it really. A bit of rugby.
And we know, everybody's got a lot to say and of different things and opinions. What's something that you'd like to see on Dog Talk, mate?
To be honest, I really enjoy everything you're doing already. There's nothing I can think of that you sort of change too much. You're giving good interaction with all sorts of either dog people, dog trialers. You're giving people a voice, and you're giving people that are interested someone to listen to. So I think it's great. It's a credit to you.
No, thank you. And if there's other people out there that have got any suggestions, don't be afraid. Come forward and have a chat to us, eh? We can't give you what we want if we don't know what you want. And unfortunately, if you don't come forward, you're going to hear what I want to know. So speak up.
Is there anyone you'd like to see us sit down and do a Q&A with?
There's probably a few, but I think one person I find very interesting to listen to is Joe Leven. He's from Casino as well. Yep. I've seen him firsthand do things with dogs that, I didn't think would would come around. He really knows how to get into a mind of a dog. Very quiet spoken. You know, his commands, they listen to every word, but they're also thinkers. So he's not taking that dog out of him. But yeah, I've seen him turn a lot of dogs that you didn't think would be able to come around.
Thank you. Well, we know we've restricted you a bit tonight because we didn't turn those questions on. But out of the ones that we got at the end there, mate, was there anything that stood out for you particularly?
I think I like the one about asking whether the dogs are better from whatever country, sort of thing. I think that's a good question.
So, Chris, if you could send us a message with your details and we'll get that bag out to you.
So that was Chris Egan, mate. He loves his collies, so good work, Chris. Now we've come to that pointy end of the night.
One last question. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
I spoke to the wife about this, and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Go the duck the size of a horse, because being a rugby player, should be able to step around it." But she obviously didn't know my capabilities. I was never good at stepping, so I'd have to try and run straight through it. But anyway, that's the way I'd go, I think.
No, mate, answered well. And thank you very much for your time tonight, mate. And anything else before we close up that you'd like to get out there tonight, mate?
No, I think the main point I have is I'd love more people to try the sport and just understand it's nowhere near as scary as what you would think it is. It's still nervous. I still get nervous out there, but it's nowhere near as hard as what you think.
No, mate, I think you got that out there tonight, and I'll lead by example and have a go myself. So everyone out there, hope you had a great night. And remember, the day you stop to learn will be a sad day for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.